I stood in a dark corner of the ballroom, watching a couple sway on the dance floor. Their gazes were locked on each other. The woman's chest rose and fell as her partner pulled her even closer than she thought possible. Her petite body pressed against his large body. They were elegant in their movements. He moved with the grace of an athlete, and she followed his example well. All eyes were fixed on them. There was an emotional connection between them, perhaps not love, but this connection was stronger than friendship. Her honey blonde hair flowed with the gentleness of the tide, swaying as she pressed her body against his. Not that she had much choice, she was held tightly by the handsome man. I would have been jealous of their connection if this woman had not been my wife for 11 years, in the arms of her boss. Instead, I felt anger and humiliation. This was not the first time we had attended her company's annual awards and appreciation banquet, and everyone who worked at the company knew that she was my wife. I saw people looking for me while we all watched a performance before us. They were all waiting for the explosion. After 3 dances, they left the dance floor together, joining other colleagues at the round table in the center of the room. I watched as she looked at him with those crazy eyes that were once only mine. It wasn't like I'd seen them recently, but that didn't lessen the disgust that was growing inside me. The only thing that came to mind was, it won't be long now. This kettle was about to boil. I just needed to hold on a little longer. I struggled to reconcile my fear, hatred, and resentment of this scene with the love, respect, and trust I once had for my beautiful wife. It was a battle I was losing, no matter how hard I tried to overcome these feelings, but now I was falling into despair and self-pity. I lowered my head in defeat. I have worked so hard these past months to try to get her back, to repair the damage done to our marriage. I had date nights scheduled, took care of housework, turned off the TV, and tried to start a conversation, only for her to leave. I've left flowers, notes, and love cards, only to find them in the trash. I sent flowers to her work, and didn't even hear if she received them or not. What else can I do now but wait? I thought to myself. I pushed those thoughts out of my mind as I walked back to the makeshift bar in the corner of the room and stood behind Marianne, one of Kelsey's old work friends. "Do you have any fun?" I asked, trying to maintain a carefree appearance. "I always like these annual parties. Harold loves the free drinks," she replied. I smiled and nodded, picking up my empty glass. "Me too." "Hey, I haven't seen Jason's wife today. Where is she?" I hoped my tension wasn't noticeable. "She always dresses so elegantly and is a pleasure to chat with." "Oh, didn't Kels mention that?" Today, Jason served her with divorce papers. I guess she was neglecting her marital responsibilities. I caught Marianne just at that stage of intoxication when she did not think too much about her words. I wasn't disappointed with the results. "No, I think not, since it's Friday night and all. We came here right after I got home from work and we didn't have a chance to gossip. I didn't just lie, it was an outright lie. We took the afternoon off to go home and get ready for the evening. She had plenty of time to mention it, but she chose not to. I refilled my Captain and Diet, grabbed a glass of white wine for Kelsey, and headed over to the table where she and Jason stood. Neither of them noticed my approach. They were too absorbed in each other. "Kels, I brought you a glass of wine." I handed her the glass. She jumped slightly when I spoke. "Oh, you scared me," she squeaked and accepted the glass. "Thank you, dear." The rest of us became increasingly uncomfortable the longer we stood there. Most people found something surprisingly interesting on a stained tablecloth or across the room and didn't look directly at me. Others stared at me, probably wondering what I was thinking and how blind I could be. A younger man, about 25, even grinned as he watched me looking at the table. He and I made eye contact. He held on for a couple of seconds, then his grin disappeared, and he too found the tablecloth interesting. We were approaching 1 o'clock in the morning, and many guests had already left the hotel hall, heading home. But I could tell Kelsey wasn't ready to break away from her dance partner. "We should probably head home, honey. I still need to take the babysitter home, and we promised her we wouldn't be later than 2 tonight," I said, aware that I was interrupting her time with Jason. Yes. Fine. I think it's time for us to go. See you on Monday. She smiled. Relief was evident on all sides that the awkwardness was almost over. Jason, it was good to see you. I extended my hand and he shook it. He was a strong man and did his best to show it with his strong grip. He was 3 inches taller than my 6 feet, but I outweighed him by about 15 pounds and had a small pouch on my stomach. I pressed a little harder than usual, looking him straight in the eyes and seeing deceit and self-righteousness reflected in them. Finally, he stopped shaking and wished us good night. I waved to the others as we walked out of the room to the car. We didn't talk on the way home, although she had a smile that made her look radiant. As soon as we got home, Kelsey went to check on Caitlin, our 9-year-old daughter, while I paid Brittany and got ready to take her home. When I returned, I went to the bedroom and found Kelsey already in bed and asleep. I checked on Caitlin, went to the bathroom, and went to bed in the spare room. I knew there would be no chance of sex between us tonight. I could hardly remember the last time we were together. My eyes closed, and the last thing I saw was the ceiling as I fell into a restless sleep, running through my internal checklist for tomorrow. I got up early Saturday morning. Caitlin was already in the living room watching her shows, and I waved slightly as I stood in the doorway. "Have you already had breakfast?" "Yeah," she declared, waving a milk-soaked spoon in the air, splashing drops of milk onto the carpet. "Okay, calm down. Mom is still sleeping and I need to work in my office." "Okay?" "Okay, Dad," she said too loudly, and I chuckled. I called my lawyer on his cell phone around 8:30, knowing that he was working from home on Saturday morning. "Good morning, Bill. This is Matthew Franks." "Good morning, Matt." "I'm guessing this isn't a happy call?" he answered, already knowing the answer. "That's right. It's time to put the plan into action. I found out that Jason served his wife yesterday. Do we know if Kelsey has already met with a lawyer?" "I don't think so, but I'll call Trash and make sure. I'll meet you in half an hour at the coffee shop. Have you sign and date the forms with my assistant for notarization? We'll file the paperwork first thing Monday morning and serve her at lunch." "Sounds good to me. See you soon." I arrived at the coffee shop early. Smiling faintly at the cutie behind the counter, I picked up my order and found a comfortable chair next to the fireplace. My mind wandered. I never thought that I would divorce the only true love of my life. It is difficult to choose the exact moment when you realize that your comfortable life is coming to an end, but you can roughly decide. It was a traffic ticket, one of those automatic camera checks when you run a red light. When you run a red light and they take a photo of the driver, the license plate number of the car along with the date and timestamp. That's all. I saw the fine when I received the mail. I laughed and immediately knew it was Kelsey. She always turned on her headlights when she was in a hurry. I opened it, deciding that I would just cry and not say a word. Nothing good could happen if she faced this head-on. The driver's photo showed Kelsey with a man's shoulder and arm to her right. I couldn't see his face, but I knew who it was. Nothing special. She could have been at lunch or going to a meeting. It could have been anything. I checked the date and time, March 5th. There was something about it that I didn't like. It wasn't that long ago that I started looking through my phone. I found our text messages on the 5th. "I'll stop by Mary's after work to pick up some clothes for Kate." I remember thinking there was nothing unusual about it. Mary's daughter was a couple of years older and we got nice gifts from them, although I thought Mary usually brought them to work. But still my radar did not signal. "Don't worry, do you want me to cook dinner?" "Yes." "What time should I expect you?" "Well, we could chat for a minute." "Okay, have fun." "Thank you, we will do that." What a bitch, I thought as I checked the intersection on Google Maps. It was on the opposite end of town from where Mary lived. But it can still be innocent, right? But then I started putting the pieces together. Since late November, Kelsey has kept a low profile. I noticed that throughout the holidays we quarreled over little things. By January, she no longer liked holding my hand while shopping or walking. Our general topics of conversation became limited to work or Caitlin. We no longer talked about our dreams. We didn't talk about family vacations or our future. I've had a trust fund since I was little. My great-grandfather bought a lot of undeveloped land in the Pacific Northwest. Then, as the local town grew, he sold portions of the land back to the town. When he died, I benefited from these purchases, and several $100,000 went into this fund. It grew again when my grandfather died, allowing the investment to grow again. I never needed to go into this since my family was self-sufficient. The balance stabilized and even grew a little, since it was created in such a way as to accumulate interest. After my father's death, when my mother had already died, I inherited all the property. I simply invested his trust in mine. With the wealth we had accumulated, the three of us were close to settling for life, but Kelsey and I continued to work and build our net worth in preparation for retirement. I received a prenuptial agreement to protect the fund when Kelsey and I got married. Every few years, we updated our prenuptial agreement and our wills. One of the clauses that always remained the same was the standard divorce clause, "What's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours." We added a clause that Caitlin would receive an education in the event of my death, or if we divorced. Of course, there were provisions regarding the mechanism and circumstances of my death. Obviously, Kelsey would not have seen anything if she had had a hand in my demise. Because of this, I had access to a family lawyer and accounting services for many years. I contacted my lawyer and found out the name of the best local divorce lawyer. I made an appointment with him towards the end of the week to look at my options. Since we had a solid prenup, he wasn't worried about any financial issues. I explained that I was not ready to take any drastic action at this time, but just wanted to know what steps to take next. "Well, Matt, we could get a private investigator to look into what's going on and see if there's anything to worry about. Unfortunately, all my investigators are busy right now. It will be several weeks before they can devote any time to your case. I do not want to wait. I'm already losing sleep over this. Are there any other options?" Well, there is one like that. He's trying to start over, but few people really trust him. We call him Larry the Dastardly. Bill went to explain. He is a former police officer who was fired due to complaints and some questionable activities. He could start right away, but I don't know if I would recommend a long-term relationship with him. "Why do you call him scoundrel?" I asked, laughing. "I want everything to be legal, so if we find something, we'll be on solid ground if we have to move forward." "It's okay. He's legal. He has a habit of obtaining information such as detailed photographs and videos, as well as emails and telephone conversations, which, shall we say, walk the fine line of what is permissible in court. But I'm told that what he finds is, one way or another, conclusive evidence of infidelity." "Okay, as long as it's legal. We could always pay him off and move on to a more reputable private investigator in a couple of weeks." I paused. "Do you think he can start today?" "I'll call him and find out. I will be your mediator here in the office. I'll let you know today." "Sounds good, thanks." I filled out a bunch of paperwork for both the lawyer and the scoundrel, connected him with my accountant, and kept the retainer fee out of my personal account. Kelsey didn't have access to it, so she didn't know what I was doing. I didn't want to scare her, especially if I was wrong, and this was just a difficult time in our marriage. While this was happening, I decided to try to repair my relationship with my wife. My life experience has taught me that people don't just change and do uncharacteristic things unless there is a catalyst. Since I didn't know what it was like for my wife, and I didn't know if we were past the point of no return, I decided to make sure I took care of the business like a husband. I took my game into my own hands and did everything I could to make her feel loved and valued as an equal partner in our relationship. I doted on her and set myself the goal of becoming a husband, who was the envy of all her friends. I was rejected at every turn, and it became obvious that we had already passed the point of no return. One Thursday afternoon, I was invited to my Bill's office to get what the scoundrel had found. I was shown hours of footage of them meeting, having sex, and playing happy couple. There were photographs, phone call records, and personal emails. I was both impressed and disgusted by the scoundrel, but agreed that his nickname was well-deserved. I sat devastated. I never would have thought that she could have had an affair with Jason Stanton. I think I could understand what's appealing about Jason. He was tall, handsome, and well-built. He was educated and on an upward trajectory in both his work and personal life. He took over Kelsey's department about a year ago. As his personal assistant, Kelsey worked closely with Jason, which gave him endless time to get to know and become part of Kelsey's life. Jason was a baseball star in college, and the only thing that kept him from enrolling in graduate school was a shoulder injury his senior year. I mean, who wouldn't be impressed by this guy? I just never thought Kelsey would let him come between us. It was all too overwhelming. I couldn't breathe, my chest was tight, my vision was blurry, and I felt like I was going to pass out. I pushed my chair back, put my head between my knees, and tried to focus on my breathing. I inhale, inhale, and exhale until my head becomes clear. The feeling of loss and emptiness cannot be described. I just lost my best friend, my partner, my lover, and the mother of my child. At that moment, I saw no way out of it, and then it got worse. He replayed the recording he made the day before, and that's why he wanted to bring us all together. Really? Do you love me? I could hear the excitement in her voice. Yes, my dear. You are the most perfect woman. I love you and want us to be a family. You mean you, me, and Caitlin? Certainly. What about Matt and Shannon? We will divorce them, you will get Caitlin, and we will live like a happy family. There was a pause in the conversation. I assumed that Kelsey was digesting the bomb that her lover had just dropped on her. You really love me, don't you, Kels? Yes, of course it is. I never really thought about leaving Matt. Well, think about it a little. He will never be able to give you what I can. You will be the beauty at every ball. You will become part of high society. You will be able to see places and things that he could never afford. I heard the contempt in his voice and imagined the expression on his face as he spoke. It would kill him if he lost Kate. We are his world. I'll be 10 times a better father than this loser could ever be. In a year, she won't even want to go and see him. Why do you hate him so much? What did he do to you? There was a hint of concern in her voice. Honestly, I wanted to know too. He doesn't deserve you, Kels. This loser has no ambition or desire to be anything more than he is today. He's a drone making someone else rich. You know he's a plant manager, right? His plant employs 400 people, and they have the highest production and highest revenue per square foot of any plant. I was a little proud that Kelsey knew this, although I would have preferred this conversation to take place in their dining room rather than a hotel room. He's a wuss, a weak beta who had no drive or ambition in school and didn't even get an MBA. He served his purpose, honey. I can trample him into the dirt any day of the week. Jason, don't ever think that you're that much better than Matt. He's not a weakling. You don't know anything about his early life. He hung out with some bad guys and is very good with a gun. He almost went down the bad path himself until didn't decide to go to school. That's why he didn't go to college for several years after high school. Now it sounded like she was bragging. He's stronger and tougher than you think. Please promise me that you won't physically confront him. I wouldn't want either of you to get hurt. He's for Kate's sake, and you're for my sake. But I'm in love with him. I wish it were so, but you replaced him as my man, my love. She paused as if thinking, how will it work and when? We'll be divorcing them at the same time. I need to get a few things in order before I service Shannon. But with her psychiatric problems and the fact that we haven't had sex in a year, it won't be difficult. I'll split everything 50-50. She is unlikely to object. Okay, but you have to file for Shannon before I even see a lawyer. She was tough. I guessed that she wanted to play it safe and not lose her comfortable life at the moment, even for the sake of her true love, her man. Agreed, now come here, woman. I asked that the recording be turned off at this point. I no longer needed to listen. I looked at Bill and asked, how can I deal with this? You strike first, Matt. But what if she changes her mind? They rarely do that, Mr. Franks. I'm afraid they've gotten to the point where nothing you do or say will make them stop or repent. I got my first good look at Scoundrel. He was in his 30s, he was fit, athletic, and his suit fit him well. Not at all how I had imagined. He was respectful and probably right, I thought. I started to see him as Larry and not as the scoundrel. I got the feeling that this guy was really on my side. Even though I was paying, he cared and was disgusted by what he saw and heard from these two. "And would you want her after what you know now?" Larry added. "You're probably right, Larry." Turning to Bill. "Bill, give me a day or two to make a decision and I'll call you, okay?" "Sounds good, Matt. Can I start the document structure and we can add details later or stop the whole thing if necessary?" "Yes, let's do it this way." Larry followed me and handed me his business card. "Here is my personal number, Mr. Franks, in case you ever need me." "Please, Larry, call me Matt. Thank you." "Matt, I know some people who could help you get revenge if you decide to go down this path. I mean, they don't call me Larry the Dastard for nothing," he stated with a smile. Laughing, I said, "Nice to meet Larry. I'll let you know if I need any help." "Seriously, though, thanks for the offer. I don't think I could do that to Kels, but I like knowing I have a friend if I decide to go that route." Larry smiled at me and waved as he headed to his car. I thought about my choice all weekend. I could barely focus on anything else, and Kelsey didn't even seem to notice that I was deciding the fate of our family. It occurred to me that she had already decided it for all of us. I struggled with all the feelings of doubt, anger, fear, and disappointment. The humiliation and loss of my perceived masculinity is what hurt the most. My identity was my work and my family. Who would I be without my family? I was worried about Caitlin and how she would move on to the next chapter. I was irritated by the idea that this arrogant bastard was going to raise my daughter. I even had visions of him leading my daughter down the aisle at her wedding. My emotions and thoughts were all over the place. No matter how much booze I poured on them, I didn't get any clarity until Sunday morning. Sitting on the back porch with a headache like hell, it occurred to me that this was probably going to happen, no matter how hard I fought it. I have already lost my wife. I saw contempt in her eyes. I've already lost my family. Now the only thing that mattered was on whose terms and on what terms I would lose everything. Then the old saying hit me. Lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. Well, I wasn't going to get out of the way, and I wasn't ready to follow these scammers. So I had only one choice: to lead. Monday morning, I called Bill. "Bill, this is Matt Franks." "Good morning, Matt. Are you any closer to a solution?" "Yes. I would like you to fill out all the required paperwork, adding only the legal photographs that Larry received. Split everything, 50-50. I paused. "Do you want to sell the house?" "Yes, we took out a low-interest loan from my trust fund to buy it, so we were paying ourselves the whole time. We will share any capital we receive, but I will pay back the full amount of the loan and the interest we have paid over the years. In addition, please add 200,000 Kels from my trust. Consider it payment for services rendered. She might be more friendly if she knew she wouldn't come out of this completely broke. I want primary custody of Kate. I know it won't be easy, but maybe Larry can find some dirt on our boy Jason that will make him seem less like a suitable father to a young girl. I heard he was a top fraternity guy in college. Maybe he got a little carried away with some of his victories. Let Larry go at him, please. I have a backup plan for Kate. If we don't get primary custody, please write me the most generous shared custody plan you've ever heard of." I stopped for a second so Bill could catch up. "Also, I want to sue Jason for alienation of love and affection, and find a way to involve his wife Shannon in this mess. I want her to be aware of what is going on, to the fullest extent of the law. And speaking of her, please create and prepare another adultery divorce scheme for her. I will pay for it. I think she should get what is due to her. We can serve them both in the exclusion room, but you should know that this will lead nowhere. I will also need to get her to sign a contract with me. I can start filling out the forms, but without her consent or information, I can't do anything else," Bill explained. "I get it. I just want to shake the tree a little, and since you're at it, I want to sue Kelsey's company for letting her sleep with her boss. I'm pretty sure they don't have a moral clause in their manual, but it should be questionable for any company to allow this to happen under their watch. He is her immediate superior. I know this probably won't go anywhere, but Again, let's shake this tree and see what comes out. Okay, Matt. It's going to cost a lot, and then it's going to go up. You're talking about a lot of man-hours, and if this is contested, even more. I understand it's just money, but I need to make sure these two don't make more money than they're owed. And as my dad used to say, whenever you get a lawyer, you're just discussing how much it's going to cost. Bill laughed at my snide comment about lawyers when he said, "We will say that your dad was a smart man. You know you don't have to give her any money from your trust. Your prenuptial agreement is airtight." I know, Bill, but I've been thinking about it all weekend, and I've decided that if I don't leave her out of pocket, she might be more willing to agree to my demands, and she kind of deserves it. She worked hard and helped me. We were both building our nest for our old age. I thought it might give her an advantage over Jason, so when she's alone, she won't have to rely on him as much. She deserves better, but there is no way in hell I will give that cheating bastard Jason more than what he has already taken from me in my life. I mean, my wife should be enough. I felt furious as I spoke, just thinking about how Jason had taken over the life that should have been mine. I've always considered myself fair in my relationships, and wanted to make sure I treated Kelsey fairly, even if she didn't reciprocate. My consolation was that I was sure that Caitlin would approve of my actions later, when she realized how our family had fallen apart. One last thing, Bill. Don't apply yet. I want everything done and ready to go. I want to wait for her to make the first move. This will give me more time with Kate in our family home. I know there will come a time when I need to pull the trigger, but I want it to be at the last moment when I can no longer deal with it. Got it. We can leave everything undated and notarized until you're ready. I work from home on Saturday mornings, so you can call me on the weekends, too. We won't be able to file until Monday morning anyway, but I can have someone stand at the door when they open and serve them that day. Okay, that's the plan. We said goodbye. I pulled Larry's business card out of my pocket and dialed the number. "Larry, Matt, Franks, how are you?" "I'm fine," he replied. "Are you ready for some dirty fun?" "Well, sort of, but I want you to wait for my word, okay?" "No problem, Matt. What are we talking about?" "Can we meet in person?" "Yes, give me an hour." "Sounds good," I replied. I was already waiting when he pulled into the parking lot. He grabbed some coffee and a snack, and then sat down across from me. "I want to collect this unpleasant file, photos, videos, recordings, everything. We need to find a way to anonymously convey this to Shannon Stanton, maybe via email?" "No problem. I know a guy who works on the dark web," Larry said. "And that's all? How about posting a video on a porn site or sending nasty messages to Kelsey's parents or coworkers?" God, he's sneaky, I thought. "No, Kels will still have to be in town. I wouldn't want her to be so humiliated that she leaves town with Kate, and I still love her, even if she doesn't love me anymore." I slid an envelope with $5,000 in cash across the table. "This should get you started, but let me know if you need more." Larry took the money and looked at me. $3,000 would do it. He may be mean, but at least he's honest. "Keep the rest as an advance. I may need your expertise later. Don't forget, sit in the folder until I call you. I want to catch them off guard, and I have my reasons for letting them make the first move. Oh, we also need to get an idea of what kind of problems his wife has. Her medical history could affect everything we decide later. Is this possible?" "Yes." "And Bill asked you to find out about Jason's student years?" "I'm looking for something I can use against them if we fight for custody." He nodded his head again and made a couple of notes on his notepad. We finished our coffee and chatted about his career as a cop and people we might have known. We finished, shook hands, and went our separate ways. This was 3 months ago. I was brought back to reality when Bill showed up, followed shortly thereafter by his assistant and Larry. "So, is it time to go?" Bill asked when everyone was seated. "Yes, it seems like that. Larry, we don't know if Kelsey has already seen a lawyer." "As far as I know, no." I quickly looked at her email after Bill called and didn't see anything. "I'll take a closer look today and know by Monday morning." Larry smiled and nodded, giving me a sly wink. "What about Jason? Any dirty laundry? I asked hopefully. Yeah, he was being investigated with his fraternity, something to do with date rape drugs, and some underage girls at parties. I received copies of everything and have already given them to Bill. Bill looked up, nodded in confirmation, and added, I have them if we need them for the custody hearing. Taking out the documents we had been working on for the past few months, he showed me where to sign. Once I signed, Bill's assistant notarized, and I addressed the group. Larry, can you find out who Shannon Stanton hired as her lawyer? And let Bill know? Then, Bill, if he's worth anything, could you share our legal file with him? What if he's not a decent lawyer? Bill asked. Then we'll connect you with Shannon somehow, but I'd rather we do it right. Larry, I don't think we need to send her creep. Larry nodded, sipping his coffee, and Bill looked at us both. Bill, can I pick up the documents on Monday afternoon? I'll give Kels the paperwork myself first and let her know what's going on, and then you can officially serve her on Tuesday. Bill nodded understandingly and talked to his assistant about getting the server ready for Tuesday. And then, I would like Jason and company to be served on Tuesday afternoon. I think we can start contacting Shannon as she will be updated soon. Bill, you can share the file with Shannon's lawyer on Monday afternoon, as long as he doesn't ruin my conversation with Kelsey on Monday night. I leaned back in my chair and sighed. Everything should be in full swing by Wednesday. Matt, have you thought about where Kelsey will be staying on Monday night? Bill asked. Just now, any problem with her staying in the house for a few days? No, until you get a restraining order and she agrees. I wouldn't sleep with her. Legally, I don't think it's a problem, but it might make you feel uncomfortable. I would be concerned about what a less scrupulous lawyer would have done with this information. Bill added. Okay, I'll give her a week to find a place. We're not having sex right now. I don't see a problem. Oh, you mean actually sleeping in the same bed? Oh, but our papers give me temporary control of the house and Kate, right? Yes, until her lawyer files a motion and has the whole thing overturned, or until we all come to an agreement. I meant actually sleeping in the same bed. It just might give a weird vibe to the applications, Bill stated. Don't worry, we're not sleeping together now. Hey, Larry, what did you find out about Shannon's health? She struggled with depression and bipolar disorder for years. Apparently, the drugs killed her sex drive, so Mr. Wonderful went looking. I don't think we want to know how you found out. Larry just smiled and shook his head, and Bill feigned shock. Bill, does this have anything to do with us? I asked. No, not now. This may play a role later, when we get to the guardianship part, and find out who stays with whom and when. We may mention this as a condition in the final draft so that Caitlin is never alone with him. Bill was busy taking notes on his iPad while he spoke. We chatted for a few more minutes, and one by one we interrupted our strategy session and continued with our day. I felt a little down for the rest of the weekend. My duties that had to be completed on Monday weighed heavily on me. Kelsey didn't notice anything, and I didn't expect her to. I called my aunt on Sunday and arranged for her to pick Caitlin up from school on Monday and keep her overnight so I could talk to Kelsey about some important family matters. They lived on a farm outside the city, and Kate loved to play with their dogs and feed the animals. She will be taking Caitlin to school on Tuesday, and I decided that we would break the news to Caitlin on Tuesday evening. I told Caitlin about these arrangements, and she was excited, although a little confused as to why she was being kept until Tuesday. I simply explained that Mom and Dad needed some personal time to discuss everything. She reluctantly accepted it. I slept in the spare room, and again Kelsey didn't mention it. She breathed a sigh of relief when she saw me heading there before bed. I lay there Sunday night, going through my checklist and double-checking my plan, and finally fell asleep. On Monday morning, I called my VP of operations and explained that I needed a week off. I also called my assistant and senior production manager to provide any details they needed to know while I was gone. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I went into Bill's office and accidentally found Larry there. I saw a stack of papers on the desk, and the flurry of activity in the office told me that everyone was busy. Matt, we filed paperwork at the courthouse this morning, and here are Kelsey's papers as you requested, and we have arranged for the official filing at your home around 9 a.m. Tuesday. Is that okay? Bill asked, handing me the envelopes. Yes, this should work. I'm going to convince her to take the rest of the week off. I'll call you if that changes, I replied. Great, fine. Bill paused for a moment to collect his thoughts before continuing. Larry found Shannon's lawyer, and he's pretty good. So I sent him our files, and his mouth started watering. He'll probably counter Sue for adultery and a ton more of their assets than 50-50. And he promised not to do anything until the morning. So it's all good. Okay, gentlemen, have we forgotten anything? I asked, a little depressed. Looks like Kelsey has an appointment with her lawyer next week, from what I can tell from her calls and emails. And Matt, please let me know if you need any more help, okay? Larry asked cautiously, earning another sharp glance from Bill at what was going on with us. Good. I think we're good, I replied, hoping I didn't have to get any dirtier than I already am. I guess it's all up to Kelsey and Jason now. I left Bill's office and texted Kelsey. Kels, are you going to be home at a decent time tonight? 5:30. Why? What happened? Nothing. I was a little distracted this weekend and wanted to try and catch up a little tonight. I made arrangements with Aunt Alex to pick Kate up this evening and leave her overnight. I think I'll bring home dinner. Any requests? How nice. Ready? I'll have dinner ready at 5:30. I felt like a complete jerk for setting her up like that. But that wasn't uncommon for me lately. I hoped she just thought I was going out of my way to be especially sweet and loving. Kelsey got home around 5:15 and changed while I set the table and put out the food. I poured a couple glasses of wine and was sitting at the table when she appeared. She took a long sip from her glass and we passed the food back and forth. We made small talk while we ate, and she seemed to have no idea what was about to happen. What does the rest of your week look like? I asked, when our meal was over and we both just picked up our favorite dishes on our plates. Quite freely, did you want to plan something? She asked, looking sideways at me. No, I thought you might want to take a week off after we chat, I said in a monotone voice, trying to keep any emotion out of my voice. Why should I do this? I know, Kels, I began, placing the envelope on the table in front of her. She just looked at it and then looked at me again, taking a sip of wine. I know about Jason and that you are planning to file for divorce. She coughed slightly, choking on her wine, and looked at me blankly. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out how I knew and what she could do to slow me down. What kind of scam? She finally grasped. The one you're meeting with the lawyer about next week and the one Jason already filed against Shannon. I know you're in love with him and plan to take Kate and leave me. I opened the bag for her and pushed some photos towards her. Her eyes widened, and she put her glass down and picked up the photos and looked through them. I saw her eyes become moist, and she began to hiccup a little, as they do when she is too emotional. I'm so sorry, Matthew. I never wanted this to happen. I do not know what else to say. She fell silent, looking at the table. I know, Kels. I've known about your plans for months now. I've had time to come to terms with it all a little. I'm very disappointed in you, and it hurts me a lot. I held my breath for a moment to regain my confidence and control my rising anger. The only thing I want to know is, did I do or didn't do something that led you to Jason? Oh God, no! She exclaimed, looking into my eyes for a second, and then retreated to the table, I think out of guilt and shame. It just happened that way. You haven't done anything to drive me away. You were a wonderful husband and father. I just fell in love with him. She finally broke out. I was both disappointed and relieved. I guess there's nothing I can do if she just fell out of love with me and decided to take Jason. He had had enough time to work his way into her heart and push me out, and now there was nothing I could do to prevent it. Our marriage was dead, and all that was left was paperwork. I pulled out the terms of the divorce and handed it to her. This is the agreement I propose. I have already submitted my application, so you don't have to do that if you agree with what I'm asking. The main points are as follows. The prenuptial agreement is valid, so my trust is out of the question. I'm offering to sell everything to us no need and split it 50-50, which of course includes the house. Since I filed first, I am asking for full custody of Caitlin and minimum child support. Of course, you will have a very flexible visiting schedule. I'll keep her on my insurance, but of course you'll need to get your own. You keep your 401k and all the investments you had during the marriage, as well as the inheritance you received from your mom. I wouldn't want to take anything that's truly yours away from you. We will split all the investments we started as a couple. Kate and I will stay in the house until we sell it. I'm also giving $200,000 from my trust so you can get settled. I would recommend that you create a prenuptial agreement and protect it if you get together with Jason as planned. I wouldn't want you to lose anything. I want to make sure that you can be self-sufficient and self-reliant as I am, not asking for any spousal support. I stopped to watch her absorb what I had just laid out for her. I think I should take Caitlin. The girl will need her mother when she grows up, she said decisively. I completely agree, but you can do this remotely through visits and calls. Honestly, I don't trust Jason with our daughter. I already know that he plans to try to turn her away from me with gifts and his polite nature. Since he couldn't give birth to his own child, he wants mine. And I think I'm more than generous in allowing him to already have my wife, but he won't have my daughter. I understand that you will want to discuss the custody part. I suggest that lawyers earn their living and try to be polite. I offered it as a peace offering when I saw her face turn red during the discussion between Kate and Jason. He would never hurt her, and that would be up to you. Separating her from her mother is a good way to do this. Well, in any case, she will stay with me until we figure out something else. You can stay here in the master bedroom for a few nights or a week until you figure everything out. Kelsey, I still love you with all my heart. I thought we'd conquer the world together, but you're killing me here, and I don't know what else to do. My world is falling apart, and I'm trying my best to be fair and kind. I really don't want to hurt you the way you hurt me. Trust me, though, if you go nuclear or let Jason interfere in our affairs, I will respond in kind. And, honey, I have resources that none of you have. My tone changed, and she could finally hear the anger in my words. I can play hard if forced. She's seen this before. So please, let's put this on low heat and let the lawyers sort it out. I would really like to be polite and courteous to you anytime we meet. I feel like it will be important for Caitlin to see us socially. I plan for both of us to be deeply involved in our daughter's life. I begged her. I really didn't want it to be a protracted knockdown fight. I am free until the end of the week, and by law you must be officially served, which is scheduled here in the house at 9 a.m. I didn't want you to feel embarrassed at work, so you might want to consider calling and taking a few days off too. I know it will be hard for both of us to be at home, but I thought we would sit down with Caitlin tomorrow night, or keep her at home on Wednesday to explain what's going on. Thoughts. Kelsey had already stopped eating and looked a little pale and sickly. I think the full consequences of her actions have finally sunk into her. She had only herself to blame. I was fat, dumb, and happy until she melted all this. She looked at me, acted like a fish out of water, and then said, "Okay, Matt, you obviously planned well and got ahead of us. I'm not sure how, but you did. I'll call work first thing and at least be home until Wednesday. Do you think Alex will be able to leave her tomorrow night too? Maybe just keep her from school tomorrow and bring her home Wednesday morning so we can talk?" My private detective Larry found out about everything after I received some hints that something was wrong in Denmark. I'll call Aunt Alex right away. I think this is a great idea. Kelsey gave me a slight nod when I mentioned Larry while she was gathering papers. I answered her and said goodnight. I assumed she needed some time alone to process what had happened and watched as she headed into the master bedroom where she closed and locked the door, which wasn't a problem since I had already moved most of my daily clothes and needs into the spare room. I called my aunt and explained that we had a little family issue we were working through, and of course she agreed to keep Caitlin an extra night and drop her off Wednesday morning. I also spoke to Caitlin and let her know that she wouldn't be going to school the next day. She was confused but didn't mind. I told her that my mother and I would explain everything on Wednesday. As I was putting things away and getting ready for bed, I heard Kelsey muttering through the door as if she was on the phone. and later quiet sobs as she mourned the loss of our marriage. I heard that Kelsey was up early and making plans for her work when she came downstairs in casual clothes. At 9 o'clock sharp, she opened the door and officially accepted her package, minus the photographs and transcripts. She met them last night in her room. Immediately after that, she grabbed her keys and purse and left. She didn't say where, but I assumed it was to meet Jason, her lawyer, or someone else who might be sympathetic. Bill called me later in the day to let me know that both Jason and their company had been served with our claims. It also turns out that Jason was countersued by Shannon around the same time. Bill emphasized that I should probably stay alert and pay attention, and apparently some threats were made against me by Jason. I never thought Jason would be too stupid since he got everything he wanted. But just in case, I went to the gun safe and pulled out my .45 ACP, made sure it was loaded, cocked, and locked, and placed it on the chair while I watched TV. I was standing at the sink a few hours later when I saw a black BMW pull into my driveway and an enraged Jason jump out and open the back door, pulling out a baseball bat. I decided that I had better go back to my chair, where my cell phone was, and call 911. Knowing the door was locked made me feel safe. I dialed 911 and told the operator that my wife's boyfriend was in my driveway with a baseball bat. They sent several units my way. Just then, I heard a second car pull up outside. Judging by the screams and tone of voices I heard, it was Kelsey. Then a high-pitched screech was heard. I jumped as my front door shattered from the force of the impact and an enraged Jason burst inside, screaming at the top of his lungs, "You bastard! You got me fired! You ruined my divorce!" He was seething and foaming at the mouth. I put my right hand on the handle of the pistol. The feeling of this calmed me. Jason swung the bat wildly, and I could hear Kelsey screaming outside, begging him to come back. "I took your wife, and now I will kill you and take your daughter too." I let him walk another 5 feet before I pulled out my gun. His eyes were narrowed, and you could tell his judgment was poor. His bat was raised above his head, but it was unlikely to be effective at 25 feet. The crack of the bullet in the chamber was deafening. I was always taught to hit my targets 3 times, and by practicing my instincts, the second shot went off a split second after the first. Jason slowed down, and I think it was just the momentum that made him take the next awkward step, and he was falling by the time the third round came out of the barrel. I caught some movement at the door, but I was too focused on my task to notice it. The bullet flew through and lodged in the splintered front door, narrowly missing Kelsey's head. She did not escape unscathed. Jason's body fell to his knees and then landed hard on his stomach. I could now hear screams over the ringing in my ears, and I was surprised by how loud the gun was in the immediate area. I began to hear sirens wailing and responding officers screaming. Not knowing how extreme the situation was, they laid Kelsey on her stomach and handcuffed her in front of the open door, her squeals and screams continuing unabated. I was shocked by the events that were unfolding in front of me and finally focused on the gun pointed at my face and the officer shouting, "Stop! Drop the gun!" he ordered, and I came to my senses a little, dropped the weapon, and followed his command. The next 2 weeks were hectic and overwhelming. Jason was pronounced dead at the scene. I later learned from police reports and eyewitness accounts that he apparently received my lawsuit and updated divorce papers from his wife at the same time. It didn't take him long to realize that the photos came from me. Kelsey stood next to him as he opened the envelope from his wife and confirmed that she too had a set of these photographs. Moments later, they were both called into the vice president's office, where they confessed to their affair, not realizing what the outcome would be. Knowing that my lawsuit against the company would not go anywhere, the managers felt it necessary to fire the managing director for having an affair with a subordinate, which is what they did. At that moment, I became the personification of evil for Jason, and he felt that I needed to pay for standing up to him and ruining his well-laid plans. After grabbing one of his souvenir bats from his office, he decided to come to my house. Kelsey saw him through the window of the second-floor conference room and guessed where he might be going. She caught up with him in our driveway and tried to calm him down before he hurt me. Of course, neither of them knew that I had been warned in advance of their arrival, and was ready. Kelsey received a black eye when Jason hit her when she tried to stop him from entering. Apart from this, she did not suffer any other injuries, but she had nightmares for several months. I talked to her once or twice between police interviews, prosecutors, and courtroom visits, but we never had a serious conversation about what happened in our home. Kelsey was a shell of her former self. Losing her husband, lover, and daughter in less than 24 hours did so. She never recovered. Kelsey stayed in touch throughout the divorce, and possibly for a month after it was finalized. She didn't even hire a lawyer or contest the divorce. I easily won custody of Caitlin. Much to my surprise, she never accepted her part of the financial agreement. Bill kept it for her, but eventually gave it back to me a year later. She also never returned to our house and stayed with the family until she disappeared. She had a few supervised visits with Caitlin, but they were awkward or unsuccessful. I made sure Caitlin was available for every scheduled visit. Whether we had confirmation from Kelsey or not, she showed up about every fourth visit. I was told that Kelsey was addicted to painkillers and other drugs that were prescribed to calm her down and help her become mentally whole. By the time she disappeared, she was unemployed, friendless, and penniless. Neither Caitlin nor I nor anyone she knew had any contact information, and we never heard from her again. We have no idea what happened to her. We lost our wife and mother. The house was sold. Caitlin and I bought another house in her school district and tried to get our lives together. We both saw counselors after this traumatic event. I did for 6 months, but eventually I had to just bury the pain and move on. I had a daughter to raise and a life to lead. Caitlin spent several years with a counselor on and off, in part due to her reaction to the divorce and Kelsey's disappearance. Caitlin had a lot of psychological issues to deal with. It took me 3 years to come to my senses enough to even think about dating. A few months later, I met a wonderful woman named Jo, who was understanding and respectful of Caitlin's and my experiences. We dated much longer and slower than either of us wanted, but eventually moved on to a physical relationship and got married about 16 months later. Jo and I raised Caitlin as our daughter, but never expanded our family. Our lives stabilized and improved over time. Our only problems were related to the major events in Caitlin's life: her graduation from high school and college. I hired Larry several times to try to find Kelsey, but every lead led to a dead end. The general opinion was that she must have died somewhere alone and debauched. It was a terrible experience, but we did our best and moved on. I was glad that I had time to create a plan of action and find the right people to execute it accordingly. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.